welcome to the third installment, lightning round. Let's get cracking.
Okay, so Microsoft has upped its dividend by 25%. Do you think they should be going on an acquisition binge instead, or do you think they should just accept it on a growth stock? What do you think?
Well, okay, here's the dichotomy. Their revenues and income is higher than it's ever been, but indeed it's not reflecting in the stock price. So I realize that they want to basically tell investors, look, we can give you a greater dividend, come give us your money and buy into our stock. However, because it's generating all this cash, I think, and they're still doing very well, although it's not a sexy company relative to everything else you're seeing, I think they should probably go out and buy a lot of companies, provided that then they let them remain independent. So if they're going to buy Skype, and if they're going to, and Skype bought GroupMe, then these companies should more or less keep their brands and remain independent with massive, sort of targets and financial incentives to keep growing. I think they could do both. I think this is a case where they could up the dividend as they have, but also go out and still buy a lot of companies. I don't think it should be either or. Next, okay, so Google Plus is adding users like wild. I mean, that's at least the headline. Is this a potential, successful product that Google has pulled off? Or is it more Google Wave, Google Buzz, or basically a ghost town?
When Google Plus first launched, or shortly after it did, there was an article on TechCrunch pretty much saying, Google Plus could very well be a Trojan horse. Before all of you hate on it, why don't you wait and see where Google's going to go? Regardless, I still think that it'll probably go the way of Google Buzz or Google Wave. The reason is the growth is kind of meaningless. The fact of the matter is Google already had all these users. All it had to do was open it public, and all these users have, by de facto, become Google Plus users. It doesn't mean anything. Okay. And in terms of like a product, Google Plus doesn't offer anything different than what Facebook already offered. It just packaged it a bit differently. There were already lists on Facebook. Google Plus just made them a little bit more usable, and the fact that it took Facebook only a couple months to pretty much clone that functionality just goes to show that there's really no unique selling proposition for users. They have no real incentive to move all their activity over.
With the unemployment rate being what it is, they should just pay people like $1,000 to not use Facebook.
$1 a login.
$1 a login. All right, next.
All right, so Hewlett-Packard, they fired Leo Apotheker. They've hired Meg Whitman. What do you think? Do they have the most sporadic, schizophrenic board in America?
Well, apparently everyone that has a comment is basically saying, forget Yahoo's board, HP is the worst board in America. You know what? I always think it's very unfair to say things like that because it's very, you don't know what's going on in the boardroom. But I think it's impossible for HP's board not to be considered the worst out there, at least for a company its size. Within a year, they brought on Leo Apotheker. They did not even interview him for the job. Like a few of the board members had met him, I'm assuming. They did not interview him for the job. The board, apparently the members hate one another. They don't trust one another. They have the whole scandal from Mark Hurd. They have the scandal from the wiretapping incident. Like, it's just, there's so much there. Now, is it going to work or not? Again, I'm not a software or hardware expert. I do think, though, that HP, despite the growth rate, it's a bit like if McDonald's, I read this was an analyst who said it, it's a bit like if McDonald's just one day decides we're not going to sell burgers. HP, I understand the growth rate isn't what you wanted in hardware. I understand the margins are not there. You're the biggest freaking hardware seller. IBM, yeah, they changed what they did. Apple, yes, Jobs came and he did all these miracles. I don't think that's necessarily the answer for HP. So if Meg Whitman comes and she kills WebOS and she basically spins off the hardware unit, I think that's a bit crazy and it won't change anything. If now the reason why they fired Leo Apotheker and brought in Meg Whitman is to say this is why we're now going to do a 180 and keep the hardware unit and maybe not buy autonomy for $10 billion when we have like $12 billion of cash, then I think that might actually, in hindsight, make the board look like courageous and they did the right thing. But clearly, I think there's something wrong in just life when a board could do that and just flip-flop so abruptly and not really taken to task and not really had to answer. So I think it's just crazy, but I mean, hey, what else surprises you in business?
Seems a little bit like panic to me, but what do I know?
So Yahoo. I mean, Yahoo now, at least, you hear 2 memos are sent out Friday evening. One from the chairman of the board and the CEO, and one from, and the co-founder, and the other one from the CEO that are basically saying very different things. Forget all of that. I want to ask you a question. I think everybody has a comment on Yahoo, and by and large, it revolves the answer to how do we solve Yahoo's woes. The answer usually comes down to focus. So assuming focus is the path to take, instead of just Monday morning QBing and saying what they should do, assuming focus, what are the products you use? What are the products they should focus on?
The only Yahoo product I still use is Flickr.
Okay.
And you know, I'm not even a photographer. I just have a couple Flickr accounts, and I do upload photos to them occasionally. I think the biggest problem or the biggest mistake Yahoo's made with that is if you actually go sign up for a Flickr account, you have to first go create a Yahoo email address if you don't already have one. If you look at what Google does, though, you create a Google account and then you choose which products you actually want to check off, which ones you want to use. And I think Yahoo has messed up the integration there. They forced me down the email path. It's a little bit messed up. What they should do is offer, you know, one global login, and then you choose what you want to use. And I think that would help their products become a little bit more usable and a little bit more sticky.
But isn't the global account the email, like the Yahoo email? You're saying they shouldn't force you to sign up to Yahoo?
Well, what you actually got to do is set up a Yahoo email account. With Google, I have a username, right? I don't necessarily activate my Gmail account. With Yahoo, I have to go and set up a Yahoo email account.
Okay. I just think, you know, with Yahoo, you have to be reasonable. It's been around for 15 plus years. There's going to be a lot of junk in the trunk, and not all integration is smooth. Not all, you know.
15 years is plenty of time to integrate, though. You know, yeah, it's a big job, but it's not rocket science. And the fact that Google could do it so well just goes to show that Yahoo is leading its main search rival again.
Okay, we'll go to email of the week, but just to comment on that, I think that's like theory, not practice, not realistic. It's like in the video space, you look at all of the companies, let's say, who run the big OVPs, the online video platforms. The earliest ones, you think they have all the time in the world to integrate new technologies, but they're the ones with the legacy systems. That's why the new guys come and they sort of beat them at their game because they could start with a clean slate. I think Yahoo's main disadvantage is that there's like a 2-pound bag and they've put 8 pounds of meat in there, and it's hard to say, I'm going to take the sausage out and focus on the filet mignon. You can't even see through the bag. Okay, that's a weird analogy. Let's move to, let's end it there. Meat in a bag. Email, what's the email?
Email of the week. All right, a guy named Doug from Chicago. Hey Ash, I'm raising money and investors want to replace me as CEO. Is that fair?
Life is not fair. I think it depends. I mean, I don't know Doug's predicament too much. I will say this. The approach to take in that scenario, and I think sometimes it's valid for the investors, hey, they're putting money in their company. They might not want you running it as CEO. They might want you to be a biz dev guy, maybe a chief technical guy, depending on what your expertise is. My approach is this, because I've been in those situations and I've been asked point blank. I always sort of turn it around to show the board that I'm pragmatic, practical, and reasonable about these things, but also that, let's not make a big deal about this now. I say, here's the reality. If I tell you I should be the CEO, it's my baby, no way am I not going to be CEO, you're going to be like, no. We need an adult supervision and we have our guy, you should be some kind of chief creative officer or whatever. Now, if I turn it around and I say, I don't want to be CEO, it's too much hassle, too much minutia to manage. I want to just be like chief strategy guy there, like going on, conferences.
I want to evangelize.
Exactly, I want to be the evangelist. Bring in a CEO, you're going to say, no, Ash, it's your baby. You are the captain of the ship. You have to do it. And I'm not saying that specific investor is unfair, but I think people like to disagree. So I turn it around and say, why don't you take a piece of paper and write down if I should be CEO or not, and I'll take a piece of paper and I'll write down if I should be CEO or not, and whatever makes more sense, like we discuss it and we go there. I think if Doug takes that approach, then he probably will end up with the right decision for everybody, for all stakeholders. That means maybe you'll end up as the CEO, but maybe you won't. But at least it's not just people debating to show, look, it's my way or the highway. But at the end of the day, if Doug has to make that decision, if you want to raise capital, whether you sell 1% or 91% or 99%, once you have outside investors, you have outside investors. You have to take into account they're going to have a say in it. That's been the show on this week, number 8. We'll be back next week to touch on many more topics.